Late autumn settled over the mountain town like a warning no one spoke aloud. The wind skimmed dust along the empty highway, rattling faded signs and pushing cold air through cracks in old storefront windows. Travelers rarely stopped here unless they needed gas or a restroom, and even then they didn't linger. The town had a rhythm built on quiet compliance, and everyone understood that staying unnoticed was safer than being right. The diner sat near the edge of town, its flickering neon sign buzzing like a tired insect. Inside, warmth existed in layers, steam from coffee, heat from the grill, and the low murmur of people careful with their words. Boots scraped softly against worn linoleum. Eyes stayed lowered. Conversations ended when the door opened. Emily Carter moved between tables with the calm efficiency of someone who had learned to carry worry without showing it. She was 32, slim, auburn hair tied back, a tired kindness in her green eyes. She worked double shifts to keep the lights on at home for her 8-year-old son. Politeness was her shield, routine her survival. In the far corner booth, a broad-shouldered man sat with his back to the wall. His hair was cut short, military neat, his posture relaxed but alert. A Belgian Malinois lay under the table at his feet, still as carved stone. The man ate quietly, observing without staring, present without drawing attention. His name was Daniel Mercer, though no one there knew it. Former Navy SEAL. Recently retired. Passing through. The bell over the door jingled again. Conversation died instantly. Sheriff Dalton Reeves stepped inside, heavy boots, wide chest, badge shining like a threat more than a symbol. His reputation filled rooms before he did. He ruled with intimidation, and the town had adjusted accordingly. He didn't greet anyone. He didn't need to. Emily approached with a coffee pot, hands steady from practice. She poured, turned too quickly, and a splash of coffee dotted his sleeve. The slap cracked through the diner. Her head snapped sideways. The room froze. Daniel didn't move. But under the table, the dog's ears rose, and his body tightened like a drawn bowstring. Emily staggered but didn't fall. Her hand hovered near her cheek, red already blooming across pale skin. She whispered an apology she didn't owe, voice small, controlled, trained by years of surviving men who mistook fear for respect. Sheriff Reeves stood slowly, enjoying the silence he created. "Clumsy," he muttered loud enough for everyone. His gaze drifted around the diner, daring someone to object. No one did. Forks rested motionless above plates. Coffee cups hovered halfway to lips. In the corner booth, Daniel lifted his napkin, calmly wiped his mouth and set it beside his plate. His expression didn't change. The dog beneath the table vibrated with contained energy, amber eyes locked on the sheriff's boots. Daniel's foot pressed lightly against the dog's shoulder. A silent command. "Stay." The dog obeyed, lowering again though tension rippled through his frame. Daniel stood, walked to the counter and placed cash beside the register. "For the meal," he said evenly. Then he added more bills. "And for the coffee." Emily's eyes flicked up in confusion, then gratitude she quickly buried. Kindness here could be dangerous. Daniel turned toward the exit. Sheriff Reeves stepped into his path, blocking the door with casual authority. "Didn't say you could leave," he said, resting a hand on his holster. "Got a problem with how I run things?" Daniel met his gaze, calm, unreadable. "No, sir. Just passing through." Something about the lack of fear irritated Reeves. He leaned closer. "You military or something?" "Yes." The single word landed heavier than a speech. Reeves smirked. "Then you should know better than to stare." "I wasn't," Daniel replied. The sheriff's pride demanded a reaction. His hand flashed out. The slap echoed again, this time across Daniel's face. Chairs scraped. Someone gasped. The dog surged halfway up with a low growl that vibrated through the floor. "Down," Daniel said quietly. Instant obedience. The dog froze. Daniel didn't raise his hands. Didn't argue. Reeves shoved him toward the door. "Resisting," he barked, already building the lie. Outside, cold air hit hard as deputies moved in. Metal cuffs snapped shut around Daniel's wrists while townspeople watched through fogged windows, fear warring with shame. The cruiser pulled away. The dog was tied to a post outside the diner, standing tall, eyes fixed on the disappearing vehicle. Waiting. Daniel spent 2 nights in a holding cell that smelled of bleach and old regret. He sat straight on the narrow bench, breathing slow, conserving energy the way he'd been trained. Anger solved nothing. Timing solved everything. Across town, the slap replayed in quiet minds. Emily touched the fading bruise on her cheek and thought about the stranger who hadn't looked away. The memory unsettled her more than the pain. Silence had always felt like safety. Now it felt like surrender. At the diner before dawn, the owner, Frank Delaney, locked the door and led Emily to the back office. From a dented cabinet, he removed a small box of flash drives and labeled envelopes. "Security backups," he said gruffly. "Every time he made me delete footage, I kept a copy." Emily stared, breath catching. "Proof. Not rumors. Not stories. Proof." At the sheriff's station, Deputy Luis Moreno sat alone in the records room, staring at the arrest report Reeves had filed. Assault on an officer. He had seen the security feed before it mysteriously glitched. He knew the truth. Hands trembling, he copied the file to a personal drive and slipped it into his jacket. By the second evening, calls had been made, quiet ones, careful ones, to a state oversight office that rarely visited towns like this unless pushed. Daniel was released without charges just after sunset. Reeves leaned close. "Leave town," he warned. Daniel said nothing. He walked outside where his dog waited, tail low but wagging once in relief. Daniel knelt, pressing his forehead briefly to the dog's. "Good boy." He drove to a payphone on the edge of town and made 2 short calls to people who understood chains of command beyond county lines. The black state sedan arrived the next morning. No sirens. No spectacle. Investigators walked into the station with calm authority and walked out with Sheriff Dalton Reeves in cuffs, his protest sounding smaller with every step. By afternoon the diner felt different. Conversations lifted slightly. Shoulders straightened. Daniel didn't go inside. He parked across the street, engine running. Emily stepped to the doorway and placed a hand over her heart in silent thanks. Daniel nodded once and drove away as light snow began to fall, leaving behind a town remembering how to stand again.